Welcome to Married to History, where we try to be informative, entertaining, and family friendly.
Aloha, I'm Christopher. I'm speaking into the microphone so that Shirley doesn't get mad at me. And I also have
hmm
a fancy piece of paper on my wall that says that I know more about history than most people do.
I'm Shirley. I'm a homeschool mom that relies on good curriculum, Christopher, and Fiddler on the Roof to teach our kids history. All right. Now, we don't have any corrections. The only note I have is that if my throat still sounds bad, it's because we recorded last week and this week at the same time. So I have not been sick for 2 weeks. I just
No, she's been sick for 20 years.
Yes, sick in the head.
I
All right, honey,
love
I
you.
have a question for you.
What kind of a question?
Well, I mean, it's history, but.
I love history questions. I don't like non-history questions.
All right, my question is, who is that?
That is Saladin.
All right, so we've done this before. This
We
is one of
have?
those, well, this format
Oh,
before.
sorry. 'Cause I don't remember talking about him before.
No.
Okay.
This is one of the guys that you selected to put on your poster
Yes.
of like your favorite historical figures.
Yes.
So who is Saladin?
All right, so I'm probably going to be butcher this because I've heard his name pronounced so many ways. So in English or in American
Uh-huh.
European culture, we refer to him as Saladin or Saladin usually.
Oh yeah, Saladin.
If I'm going to try, and I'm probably going to butcher this, I believe the correct pronunciation of his name is
Uh-huh.
Saladin.
Yeah, there's an H in there, kind of, isn't there?
I believe so, or at least that's the way I've heard it that I'm
Yeah.
inclined to believe is the most correct.
Right.
So I'm sorry, you asked me a question about him. What was the question?
Who the heck is he?
All right, so Saladin is arguably one of the most famous people to come out of the Arab culture, the Muslim imperial culture. He was the leader of the Muslims during the time period of the Second Crusade and the Third Crusade.
And he was the inventor of salad.
Oh my goodness. Give me strength.
If that's
He
an
was not the
offensive
inventor of salad. Salad
joke.
was the word salad comes from the Romans who were far, far, far ahead of Saladin when they invented that word in their language.
Okay.
Salad was invented by putting salt on vegetables. That's what salad means, salted
mean,
vegetables.
It's
It has nothing
possible.
to do with Salahadin.
It's spelled the same way. Nothing else
Okay.
to say. So, famous
All right, so yes,
guy.
he's the king of the Saracens specifically. Now, I want to be clear. I do not know if the Saracens were just a tribe or one of the kingdoms amongst the Muslim empires that
Uh-huh.
existed at the time, or if that was the word for like all Muslims in that particular
Mm,
area. Or that. So I do not know for certain where the term Saracen comes from. But
okay.
Saladin was the leader of the Saracens. They surrounded the kingdom of Jerusalem after the First Crusade. I believe he ruled from Damascus, but before that, it's been a long time since I read about him. So he came from a successful family. I
I mean,
believe,
if he was the king, I would
but
assume
before he
so.
became like king or united them all, or all the Arabs under his banner against Jerusalem, I believe he and his family had a lot of great prospects, particularly in Egypt. I think he owned all of Egypt and the surrounding area there prior
Dang.
to eventually becoming king of the whole thing. And I want to say that he and his dad were, and possibly one or more of his brothers also, went out on a conquest era and conquering lots of kingdoms. And Egypt was the part that was left to him or that he took for himself. I remember reading about this, but it's been so
Huh.
long I do not remember all the details. So he was a very accomplished military leader, and I think
Okay.
also a very, very accomplished diplomat, a very good man. I dare say he is among the better men that have ever existed. And when I say that, I don't mean because he
Wow.
was a man. I mean he was one of the better human beings
Yeah.
that has ever existed. That's not to say
That's
that
high
he
praise.
didn't have any kind of nefarious side or questionable characteristics or practices or anything to that nature, but he seemed to be a very smart man, a very prudent man.
Uh-huh.
He was devastating against his enemies in times of war. Like he could win battles, but he could also be diplomatic and find ways to avoid fights if not necessary. So I
Okay.
think he was one of the greater people that we've had in history, and I think it's kind of sad that we really don't, at least in Western culture, his name really doesn't come up unless you're talking about the Crusades. And even then, usually all that gets mentioned is that, yeah, he was the leader of the Saracens. He captured Jerusalem, so got the city away from the Christians. And then Richard the Lionheart led the Third Crusade against him, and that was it. Then he kind of disappears off the map. And as I say that, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I don't remember what happens to him after he defeats Richard during the Third Crusade. I don't even know if it can be considered that he defeated Richard during the Third Crusade, or the two fought themselves to a standstill. The Christians never get Jerusalem back. So Saladin, that is, if I remember correctly, that is something that he promised to the people during his lifetime. He said that he was going to bring Jerusalem back, put it back under Muslim control. And so he did live up to that promise, and the Christians never get the city back.
Despite the many, many crusades.
Despite many, many crusades, yes. So the first crusade was the most successful of them all. Jerusalem is captured by the French crusaders, and the kingdom of Jerusalem is set up, and it lasts for I think the better part of a century. It doesn't last that long before the Muslims are eventually able to come in and take it over.
That's a long time. I've said this before, like, trying to comprehend the timeline of history and like how long or how short things were. Like, if the first crusade set up this victory for 100 years, that's a freaking long time. 100 years is a long time. That's a couple generations. Yep. That's amazing.
Well, and I might be wrong. It might not have been 100 years, but yeah, I get your point.
I'm just saying it's a big deal, and you make it sound like it's so short. Well, like, sure, in the grand scheme of the entire Middle Ages.
Honey, remind me, what kind of historian am I?
Macro.
Macro. So, okay, I'll give you this. Yes, the Kingdom of Jerusalem lasted longer than the Confederacy.
There you go. There's some perspective.
Have I ever talked about the Confederacy? Is it that lasted a long time?
No, but I mean, it gives perspective. Okay. Like, a lot of things have lasted longer than the Confederacy, though.
So, anyway, yes, Saladin is able to lay siege to Jerusalem. There's a movie they made not too long ago, or no, actually, it was a while ago now, Kingdom of Heaven with Orlando Bloom.
Yeah.
And so that movie has, like all movies do, a lot of historical inaccuracies in it.
No, but for the most, I thought it was a documentary.
But for the most part, I still think it's a good period of the piece. I love the actor that they got to play Saladin. I think he's very good. I loved his performance. And some of the elements in that story are true. There was indeed a man named Balian, who was the defender of Jerusalem. The king of Jerusalem was Guy de Lusignan, and he is indeed captured by Saladin in battle, and Saladin does put him on a donkey and parade him around in front of the city of Jerusalem as kind of a morale thing, say, hey, look, I got your king, look what I'm making him do, to try to encourage them to surrender. But the city fights for a good long chunk of time before it does surrender.
Okay.
So after that crusade is over, I often refer to this as the Second Crusade. The Second Crusade is probably the one I know the least about, but in my limited understanding of it, the Second Crusade is what I often refer to as not like the Crusade where, okay, a whole big army arrives on the scene and then does more conquering. Yeah. More so that the Second Crusade was other knights just showing up, sometimes in droves and sometimes just individually.
Like trickling in.
Yeah, trickling into the kingdom and trying to protect the kingdom, preserve the kingdom, and occasionally making names and getting honors and glories for themselves as well.
But they did lose the kingdom.
They do eventually use, yeah. So it was a common practice to get more people to go to participate in the Crusades. They would get promises of indulgences or forgiveness or whatnot from as high as the Pope, even all the way down to like the lowly local clergyman could tell somebody that, hey, if you want God's forgiveness for this, that, and the other thing that you've done, go on the Crusades. Murderers, rapists, and thieves were often told, hey, go on the Crusade.
Wow. I mean, those are the people I know I want defending the kingdom of Jerusalem.
So the Third Crusade, and this ties into a lot of the Robin Hood legends, because supposedly the guy who is Robin Hood joins Richard the Lionheart, Richard the First, King of England, on this Third Crusade.
Not the first King of England.
Richard the First. Sorry,
Richard the First.
Richard the First, King of England. Not Richard the First, King of England. Yes.
We've addressed this before. It was William, not Richard.
Yes. All right. So yes, he leads the Third Crusade. He fights a good campaign because Richard isn't a fool either, but he's never able to recover the kingdom. And I don't remember how far he gets.
Because Saladin is amazing.
But yeah, he and Saladin basically fight each other to a standstill.
Yeah.
And and the Crusades ultimately end up failing. All of the Christian kingdoms I believe, are wiped out before the Renaissance sets in. I might be wrong.
Dang.
But without a doubt, none of the Christian kingdoms are a power in the area
Yeah.
anymore by the time the Renaissance comes around.
And yet they still kept sending crusades. How many were there?
I believe officially there were
Yeah.
4. There might have been 6.
Oh, I swear there was more.
But no,
Okay.
because there were.
Okay.
So as far as the ones given numbers now, and I don't know if I'm pretty sure it's historians gave them these numbers. So I know there were at least 4 major ones. There might have been 6, or it might be a
It's
point
how
of
you
contention
count
with
it.
historians. So there might have been 6 major ones, but then there were lots of little tiny ones
Okay.
after that. So like one comparison is the Reconquista could be called a crusade, but it usually isn't talked about in the form of the crusades. The Reconquista is what it's
Reconquer.
yes, is what is called when the Christian kingdoms in Spain
Mhm.
fight. So Spain has been overrun by Muslim kingdoms for I don't remember if that happens before or after the Crusades start. That might have been after the Crusades were already over. So I'm getting my dates mixed up now, but anyway, so one could argue that the Reconquista was like a crusade in that Muslims were expanding their power into Europe. Spain had already fallen almost entire, the Iberian Peninsula rather had fallen almost completely, and there were Muslim armies that were invading all the way up even north of Paris into France. So they were getting in there. They didn't have as much success in French territory as they did in Spanish territory, but the Reconquista, the goal of the Christians getting the Muslim empires back out again, one could argue that that was a crusade.
Oh, okay. So I looked something up. The Google tells me that Saracen was just a generic term used by Greeks and in the Greek and Latin writings. That was a generic term for Arabians or Muslims.
Okay,
or,
so and
we were
that's why
grouping them
I
all.
couldn't remember if it was a title or what. Okay, so
Yeah.
so Saladin was king of the Saracens, king of the Muslims.
Right. So Saracen eventually became an obsolete term, but yeah, that's what it was.
And so, if I do remember correctly, also while the city was, so in particular to Jerusalem, while the city was now under Muslim control after Saladin took it, I believe he opened it back up to free worship.
Really?
So this was one thing that I thought was good about all the conquerors, if I'm remembering correctly. The Muslims, Christians, and Jews, all 3 of them believe that Jerusalem is a holy city.
Yeah.
The Jews, because that's where they were led to settle after they had done their 40 years in the wilderness. Christians, because that's where they believe that Christ was crucified and resurrected. Muslims, because they believe that that is where Muhammad was translated, and they also believe that that is the site where Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac, but did not go through with it.
Okay.
So it's a holy city for all 3 religions.
That took place in Jerusalem, supposedly?
The Muslims believe that's the place. I don't think anybody outside of Islam teaches that that's the place. And to my knowledge, no legitimate archaeological studies have been done to confirm that. And part of the reason for that is because the Muslims that are there aren't going to allow any. They've been very stubborn about allowing any archaeological work in the area.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the reasons being arguably because they know that that's where the Temple of Solomon was, and they refuse to allow anybody to offer proof that that's where the Temple of Solomon was.
Right. There's lots of political issues now. I
remember seeing a couple of interviews with local leaders in the area that continue to use as their primary defense that there's no evidence that this is where their temple was. It's like because locals at least keep destroying any effort made by people to verify that this is where the Temple of Solomon was. I remember a long time ago I was watching a documentary where they were digging some tunnels underneath, doing some excavation.
Yeah.
So I should rephrase. They weren't digging tunnels under the temple, but they were doing excavations, and they were finding chambers and areas that went under the temple, and they were excited because they were finding stuff that verified that, this is indeed where the Temple of Solomon was. And then when they came back a couple days into their work, the tunnels, or the holes in the wall, whatever entrances they had found to these areas had all been sealed off with concrete.
Yeah. Okay, anyway, so you were saying, so these 3 religions both have strong claims on Jerusalem.
So all 3 of them have strong claims, and so if I remember correctly, both the Muslims before the Christians came in the Crusades, and the Christians even during the Crusades, and then Saladin after, and the Muslims still after the Crusades, still kept the city open for pilgrims of all 3 faiths. None of the faiths were ever not allowed, at least not for an extended period of time. None of
Okay.
them weren't allowed to make pilgrimages to the city. So that was something that I always thought
That's
was cool about
surprising.
the people. That, yeah, even though they didn't like the leaders of the.
Yeah.
So this is one of those cases where I think to myself, where okay, the leaders might not like each other, but they
Uh-huh.
allow the people who have nothing against each other to commingle and to.
That's really
So I'm not saying that,
interesting.
that there weren't some laws. I believe there were taxes, so the Muslims taxed the
Well,
Christians and the Jews, and the
okay,
Christians
that
taxed
makes
the Jews and
sense.
the Muslims. But yes, people were allowed to come into the city. It wasn't locked off, and people weren't
Uh-huh.
denied their ability to go to these places.
Wow. Okay, anything more about Saladin specifically?
Um, I wish I could remember some of the things that were in that book. 'Cause I remember that might have been from that Crusade book.
Yeah, I got your
Some
book.
of
It
the
was
things that
like
you gave to me because I remember
Crusades from the Arab
I enjoyed
perspective.
learning more things about him that I know. Like
Mm-hmm.
I knew he was a great commander. I knew that he was a smart guy, a decent diplomat. But that
Uh-huh.
book had some other cool things to tell me about him. I don't remember what they all were.
You'll have to reread it.
But anyway, yeah, I think he's a cool guy in history that I think we should learn more about because again, just of his genius and just the capabilities he had as far as uniting different peoples, as far as managing, as far as having diplomatic relations,
Uh-huh.
the way that he treated prisoners, the way that lots of things about the man seem
Yeah.
commendable to me. Now, once
Mm-hmm.
again, I want to be clear. I'm not surprised if he didn't do some nefarious things from time to
Mm-hmm.
time, but I think in large part he was a more admirable man than ones that should be criticized.
Right, right. And we've talked about that before. Like people aren't 100% good or 100% evil.
The
So,
dude wasn't
yeah.
Hitler.
Yeah, well,
There. He
I
wasn't Mother
mean,
Teresa, but he wasn't Hitler.
although, have you heard about Mother Teresa?
I've
She is
heard
not
about Mother Teresa's
she is
existence.
well, she is not considered a 100% infallible hero anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I assumed it was still too soon and that you weren't allowed to say anything bad or nefarious
No.
about her.
No, people are saying more negative about her
Yeah.
recently. I've heard people talk.
I'll have to look that up at some point in time.
Yeah, so you
'Cause
can't use her as an
she,
example
she was
anymore.
born before the 50s, but I don't know that she did anything of
I
tremendous
don't know.
import before the 50s.
I don't know. All right. Do you know how Saladin ended his life? Was it an ignominious death? Did he
No, I don't remember. I doubt it was
a
ignominious.
battle or?
I doubt it was ignominious because he was still, to the best of my knowledge, to his dying day, he was beloved by the people. They loved him. I know he did have some political rivals, people that wanted his power, people that wanted
Well,
his dynasty to
naturally.
end. Yeah, but for the most part, I believe he died a hero with his people loving him. I
Good
don't
for
recall
him.
it. And again, I think he had the respect of even his enemies and other leaders in other parts of the world respected him. It's like you don't have to. You obviously they were try to, or obviously they're fighting wars against each other,
Mhm.
but you can still respect the guy.
Well, yeah, I think you can admire your enemy, especially if we're talking like in war times.
Mhm.
Like, dude, that was a good strategy. He got me there.
So like so I could be remembering wrong, but I think this is one of the things that the movie, the Kingdom of Heaven movie, did get right. Before Guy de Lusignan became king of Jerusalem, I do believe that Saladin had a good, friendly, almost cordial relationship with the previous king. I don't remember the previous
Really?
king's name off the top of my head, but I do believe they had at least a cordial relationship with each other.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the details that the movie kind of gets right, but I don't remember for sure.
Okay. Now, was his rule primarily like as sitting on a throne in Jerusalem, or is he primarily a
No,
conquering king?
So, no, if I remember correctly, his capital was in Damascus.
Oh, sorry, you
So
probably said that.
so I believe at the time that he takes Jerusalem, I believe
Okay.
his capital is in Damascus.
Okay.
But he himself doesn't come from Egypt though. But his land, his power base started off in Egypt, or at least his
Oh.
personal lands and power base started up or were based in Egypt.
Yeah.
And I do think that Egypt or the North African coast is where he and Richard do much of their fighting during the Third
Mm.
Crusade.
Did the two of them literally like sword to sword? They dueled, or is it just his troops versus his
Probably
troops?
not. This was well into the time period where kings usually didn't ride in front of their armies.
Yeah. I mean, that's a beautiful image
I mean, I wouldn't be.
of these
So,
two men
I don't
fighting.
know about Richard, but I wouldn't be surprised if Saladin actually went into battle riding a very, very large chariot. that could have been considered a
Ah,
tank of its time period.
that'd be cool.
I'm saying that just because, or yeah, I'm getting my empires mixed up. I remember Darius, the all the way like thousands of years
Darius?
earlier.
Darius?
Darius or Darius, yes, either one works.
I've heard of him.
One of the Persian emperors.
Yeah.
So during his battles with Alexander, he went in riding a big fortress-sized chariot so that he could
Nice.
observe the battlefield, amongst
Nice.
other reasons, probably. So I wouldn't be surprised if Saladin had something similar to that. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if Richard did too, but that goes against the whole chivalry idea that would still be in place. He shouldn't be riding in something. He should be on a white stallion carrying a Christian banner.
Right.
But yeah, so to the best of my knowledge, neither of them actually went into the battles.
Well, that's dumb.
Maybe during their younger days, both of them would have been forced to go into the battles, but by the time that they would have fought with each other in the Third
Uh-huh.
Crusade, yeah, I doubt either of them was the frontline type of person.
See, once you get to that point, you just sit back and then you take all the glory while other men fight it out.
That's history.
Yeah.
Who built the Colosseum, honey?
No idea.
We say that Trajan built the Colosseum.
Oh,
Odds
do
are-
we? Do we say Trajan built the Colosseum?
Yes, we say that Trajan
Okay,
built the Colosseum.
we say that. Go
Yes, we say that Trajan built the Colosseum.
ahead. Okay.
I'm willing to bet the man never put one brick down.
He probably strutted around and approved some designs and
Yeah.
all that. That
Oh,
counts,
he might
right?
have done that,
Right?
but yeah, I'm willing to bet he never put a brick down, so he didn't build it, but we say he built it.
I know. And wasn't there another one?
Oh, and even this is in some theologies, some of the Abrahamic religions.
Uh-huh.
So the Abrahamic religions are Christianity, Judaism, and Muslim, because
Yeah.
we call them the Abrahamic. Because despite the many differences between Jews, Christians, and
Uh-huh.
Muslims, all three of them believe that God is the God that was worshipped by Abraham.
Right.
So they call him different things, they give him different names, they worship him in different ways,
Uh-huh.
but they all believe that whoever Abraham was praying to, that is God.
Right.
So, if I remember correctly, all of the Abrahamic religions, or not all of them, sorry, some of the Abrahamic religions
Uh-huh.
and their sects teach the idea that technically God didn't make the earth. His angels or his servants, they are the ones that did it. He organized it all. So yeah, he was the
Yeah.
architect that stood there and said, "Hey, put this there." But
That could
he's not
be.
the one that, with his own hands, labored to create it.
But if that's how it was, then it doesn't matter. He still gets the credit.
Yeah, and I'm cool with that.
It was his idea.
We often give the designers credit over the lemmings
Right.
that made it possible.
That's true.
Think about it, Alexander the Great. His soldiers did some awesome things under his command, but we remember that he was awesome,
Yeah.
not that his Macedonians were awesome.
Right. For Nero, we remember that he took all that land and he built his major palace, but we don't talk about the people under him that were following his orders.
Mm-hmm.
The many, many people that would have had to do all that, because it was a big project.
Including the people that sacrificed themselves to make candles so his workers could see.
Oh my gosh, that's dark. But not because we're talking about
Yes,
candles.
if we haven't
But
made this clear
dark.
to our beloved audience, I'm a big fan of dark humor. Maybe it's the historian in me.
I mean, when you're surrounded by so much tragedy, you have to find a reason to laugh about it, right?
Sure.
That's what horrible histories is.
History isn't horrible.
No, but that's what horrible histories is. You take these horrible tragic parts and you find a way to laugh about them.
Sounds like nonsense to me.
You should love horrible histories.
I don't know what you're talking
I
about.
still don't. I don't understand.
I
you.
refuse to believe that anything created by 6 idiots could be good.
I don't know if that's the name that they call themselves or if that's just a fan given name.
Aren't you a fan? Thus, isn't that the name that you've given them?
Well, yeah, I support it
There you go.
because they're amazing.
I maintain, I like the one guy because I saw him do stuff outside of horrible histories
The
and
one
ghosts.
guy.
I
There's
don't know his
6 of
name.
them.
The
Which one?
The one who plays the poet who's a terrible poet.
Oh,
I've seen him do other stuff, and I
Matthew-
like his work.
Matthew.
I like his
Bainton?
performances. I don't know his name.
What else have you seen him in? Whatever
let's
it
see.
is, I need to see it now.
Okay, I think I've seen him in a couple of different things, but the one that's standing out most of me, there was this comedy show called Spy, I believe.
I haven't heard of it.
He was definitely in the first season of that. I don't remember if he came back for the second season,
Hmm.
but I loved his character. He was hilarious.
He's pretty great.
Yes, it was a good show. I missed that show. Robert Lindsay was in it also. I love
no
Robert
idea
Lindsay.
who that is.
You do.
Oh wait. Robert Lindsay is from that that miniseries that you watch?
The Horatio Hornblower
Yes.
series, yes. But
What?
you've seen him in something that's going to be more appealing to you.
What have I seen?
What was that musical where they're on the cruise liner with that girl you really like?
Oh, that's right. Not. I'm totally blanking. I'm totally blanking. Not Some Like It Hot. What is it? Dang it!
Aren't you the musical person?
With Sutton Foster.
I don't know who Sutton Foster was. That the girl's name?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So yes. Anyway, he was the old man, the
Yes.
gangster in that movie,
And the dance that they do together.
So I enjoyed seeing him in that as well.
What is it called?
He was hilarious. He was
Anything goes.
hilarious in Spy. Loved him.
I'd believe it. Yeah, I wouldn't believe that he could do comedy seeing him in Horatio Hornblower, but
If
yeah,
I
believe
found
it
out
now.
that he is a listener of our podcast, I would go nuts because I would love to get him on for an episode. Well, not so much to get him on for an episode, but just to be able to sit down and talk to him. That would be cool. I don't know why I'm like celeb crushing on him of all
That's
people.
so random. I
There
haven't
are
heard you say that
lots
before.
of others, but yeah, I don't know, for some reason I really want to be able to sit down and tell him how much I loved his performance.
That's awesome. Maybe we can. Maybe he's on Cameo. We can find him on there.
What's Cameo? Is that an app?
You're so old.
Haven't our daughters established this? I'm a boomer.
Yes, apparently. No, Cameo is a site
Robert
where.
Lindsay's probably a boomer.
Oh, he's older than you. Cameo is this app or a website where B-list celebrities and below, they put themselves on Cameo and you pay them.
Calling Robert Lindsay a B-lister?
No, I'm just saying you probably aren't going to find John Krasinski on there. But like someone like Robert Lindsay or one of the 6 idiots, for sure.
Okay.
So you pay
We're way
them.
off the topic. How are we talking
I have
about
to explain
Saladin
what
and now we're
Cameo
talking
is.
about British actors?
Because we're done. We're just fooling around. Anyways, Cameo, you pay them, and some of them are like $20. Some of them are like hundreds of dollars, depending on how in demand they are. And you pay them to record a video message for you, like 5 minutes. I could pay them to say happy birthday to you or something.
Ooh.
It's a really cool idea. I mean, if you're a minor celebrity and you can make a few extra dollars easy, great idea.
I know what it is. I want Robert Lindsay to do my phone message, and I want it to say something like this. Christopher can't come to the phone right now. He's on a frigate with me, Captain Pelu, and we are about to go attack some French people or something. I don't know.
You should put some more thought into that.
I need to put some more thought into that. But I want it to be something like that. Yeah, he can't come to the phone right now because he's on a sailing adventure with me.
Right.
We're fighting pirate ships together, or we're gonna seize a ship of war, a man of war. I mean,
that's a great idea.
See, now I'm having fun with this.
I mean, I
gotta pop those movies back in the DVD player now.
It's been a long time since you've watched it.
It has been,
and it has nothing to do with Saladin.
It doesn't. They do go to Iran.
That's where they get the plague.
Yes. So they go to a Muslim kingdom,
and then they
Saladin
quickly run away.
Was Muslim, so there's our connection.
No, it's not even the right time period.
Why you gotta be so difficult?
Because
macro history, honey. It's two couple centuries. Let's see here. So First Crusade to the Napoleonic era, 6 centuries. Not that far apart.
Oh yeah, that's nothing. That's just a drop in the bucket.
For all we know, some of the characters that they met in Iran could have been descendants of Saladin.
Yeah, like great
descendants of Richard's guys who got left behind.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, that's relevant.
An awful lot of the Englishmen that joined Richard's crusade, a lot of them didn't come home.
I thought that was because they died.
That could be. Could have also just been they couldn't afford passage back home, so they stayed behind.
I never thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, if your benefactor fails, there's no more money. He goes home. He's probably not going to pay all of you to go home with him.
That's dark. That would really stink. You're like, I can't afford food to travel home. I guess I'm here forever. Dude. All right, well, thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, then please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a 5-star review. Were you going to say something?
I was just thinking on the lines of dark humor and crusades. I should tell you about the children's crusades at some point.
That sounds familiar. I should know what that is.
I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't. Children got taken into the army to go on a crusade. All right, but
That's
anyway,
not good.
That's another talk. Oh, it connects to something. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that. All right. If you'd like to hear a future episode with more information about today's topic, contact us on Gmail, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Married to History Pod.
Also, please contact us if you have a silly question idea or if there's something from history that you would love to learn about.
Just be sure to specify in your message if it's silly or serious, because we don't want to treat a genuine quest for knowledge as a joke.
Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
All right, we're still good?
I believe so.
We are still good. Okay, you ready?
I am always ready to be embarrassed by you.
Yeah, I think it's the other way around.
Mm-hmm. I'm not the one that sounds like an idiot asking ridiculous questions every day.
Uh-huh. Do you need to adjust your mic so you can actually speak into it?
Is there something wrong with the way I'm speaking into it now?
You get farther and farther back, and then you turn your head to the side.
You cost me that level!
Oh no. Poor baby. All right,
remember that the next time you get mad at the kids for denying you 5 flowers to get together to make an eggshell or whatever. I don't know.
What are you talking about?
I don't know what your game is. Aren't you always combining stuff together to get bigger stuff?
It's called merging.
Whatever.